Well, I think we have a lot of foes. I think the European Union is a foe, what they do to us in trade. Now, you wouldn't think of the European Union, but they're a foe. Russia's a foe in certain respects. China's a foe economically, certainly. They're a foe. But that doesn't mean they're bad. It doesn't mean anything. It means that they're competitors. They want to do well, and we want to do well. And we're starting to do well.
Donald Trump this morning listing the European Union as a foe of the United States before naming Russia, despite knowing that 12 Russian intelligence agents were just charged by his own Justice Department with attacking the 2016 election. Joining me now, John Fuglesang, host of Tell Me Everything on SiriusXM. Jess McIntosh, Zerlina Maxwell, and Jason Johnson are back with me. I'm going to come to you, John, straight off the bat and play you one more bite from that
please do.
European Union is a foe extraordinary interview that CBS Evening News got. Take a listen.
No, I look at them all. Look, EU is very difficult. I want to tell you, maybe the thing that's most difficult, don't forget, both my parents were born in EU sectors, okay? But in a trade sense, they've really taken advantage of us. And many of those countries are in NATO, and they weren't paying their bills. And, you know, I, as an example, have a big problem with Germany because Germany made a pipeline deal with Russia where they're going to be paying Russia billions and billions of dollars a year for energy. And I say that's not good. That's not fair. You're supposed to be fighting for someone, and then that someone gives billions of dollars to the one that you're, you know, guarding against. I think it's ridiculous.
Before I come to you, I just want to note that Donald Tusk, who's the president of the EU, of our foe, apparently the European Council, president of the European Council said America and the EU are best friends. Whoever says they're foes is spreading fake news, using his terminology. Anyway, your thoughts?
Well, this is a president who's been harder, literally, on Meryl Streep than on the people who attacked our election and hacked our electrical grid. Don't forget that. That has to be brought up all the time. I think Donald Trump is talking like a mob boss. You missed your last payment, Pops. He doesn't understand how it's always worked. And a lot of this money is money that is not needed at the present time. The alliance is more important. And I think before he dismantles NATO, he should be forced to prove he knows what the letters stand for.
And I mean, Jess, the EU doesn't pay us.
No, they don't.
He makes it sound like they're overdue on a bill that they owe us.
Almost like someone else is writing the talking points.
He doesn't understand what's happening. That soundbite that you played, literally none of it makes any sense. The premise of his concern doesn't make sense. His conclusions don't make sense. The facts don't line up with the facts that are supposed to. He's not a smart man.
That hat with that spray tan, none of it
doesn't make sense.
I mean, so Donald Trump wants a close relationship with Russia. He wants to be friends with Vladimir Putin, but he's upset that Germany wants to do business with Russia. These two things don't line up.
Right.
I don't understand. Do you understand?
No, I don't understand.
Oh, okay.
I mean, like, trying to explain President Trump and what he says and does is a very difficult task. So as a political analyst, all of us every week have a struggle with this because, as Jess said, no logic. The facts don't line up. And so in this particular case, Donald Trump doesn't know what he's talking about. But I would say this. I think that his behavior towards Russia is very nefarious. Are we going to watch two co-conspirators meet on Monday? I'm not sure. And based on the indictment that we saw on Friday, I think that's a real concern. So on the one hand, it doesn't make sense. It's an incoherent argument about NATO and what's wrong with NATO from a person who doesn't really understand NATO. But also, on the other hand, the darker side is that he could be somebody that is in the tank.
I'm sorry, the three of you are brilliant and much smarter than me, but I think it makes all perfect sense if you consider his entire goal is the same as Putin's, which is destabilizing Western alliances. And I view what's happening Monday as more of an employment progress report rather than anything else. I think you can predict his behaviors.
And Jason, so that is the darker side, right? It's sort of funny when you read the quotes, right? But then when you think about the fact that Putin's wish list does include destabilizing the Western alliance, breaking up NATO, picking off pieces of the EU and having them turn against each other. Donald Trump seems to share those goals. And so the darker side of this, his former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, before he was indicted, assured the Russians that we would not, that the sanctions wouldn't last. So we don't know if Donald Trump will repeat that same sort of behavior. Isn't that kind of the darker sort of setup here?
Right. Well, I mean, the thing is, the United States is really the world's only superpower, hyperpower left, if you consider both economics and military. And by shifting to this new world order where it's the U.S. and Turkey and Russia and North Korea, as opposed to our traditional allies. It's like LeBron moving to the Western Conference. Like, everything is just messed up now, right? Like, there's an imbalance in how the world is, so far as we've understood it for the last 70 years, operates. And the problem is that when the United States shifts in this way, it disrupts every single flow of information possible. So it's not just that Trump may promise that he's going to end sanctions. It means any information that the French, the Germans, or the British have shared with him, he may just tell Putin. And that makes every single way that we have understood this world to operate to become in danger and in risk. And the fact that he wants to ally with non-democratic authoritarian regimes makes it dangerous for everyone living here.
And can we remind ourselves that when Donald Trump met without any American handlers or anyone with him in the Oval Office, when he invited the former Russian ambassador and the Russian foreign minister into the Oval Office, he denigrated the FBI director, James Comey, denigrated him, called him crazy, etc. Now Donald Trump is attacking another FBI agent ahead of his meeting with Vladimir Putin, calling him a disgrace. Let's take a listen to more of that interview.
I think that getting along with Russia is a good thing, but it's possible we won't. I think we're greatly hampered by this whole witch hunt that's going on in the United States, the Russian witch hunt. I watched some of the testimony, even though I'm in Europe, of Strzok. And I thought it was a disgrace to our country. I thought it was an absolute disgrace, where he wants to do things against me before I was even, I guess, before I was even the candidate. It was a disgrace, and then he lied about it.
A president is on foreign soil calling an American FBI agent a disgrace and praising Russia and saying it would be good to... I find this shocking.
The bar has gotten so low in terms of what we are able to accept from this president. The idea that, the president going overseas and criticizing Democrats should be something that people are very, very concerned about. The fact that he's going overseas and criticizing American intelligence is completely
American intelligence and criticizing a man who's actively attempting to protect the country against Russian attacks on our election system.
Especially because he called him a disgrace. He knew
and
those indictments were coming when he praised Russia overseas.
And as Malcolm Nance pointed out, it's not just any FBI agent. It's the chief spy hunter.
Correct.
And so this person is probably a foe, to use Donald Trump's word, of Vladimir Putin, because his job in the FBI as chief spy hunter was to find those Russian operatives and figure out what they were up to. So it's not just that he's attacking the FBI. He's attacking the person in the FBI who's in charge of preventing the attack on our election that we saw in 2016.
And again, it's completely consistent. None of this should be a surprise. We all know that Trump's not a fan of intelligence, but what he's doing is what he's done all along. He's talking out of both sides of his mouth. He's trying to say that the attack was a hoax while simultaneously blaming the attack on Barack Obama to the base.
It doesn't make sense, but Jason, I am old enough to remember that, the previous star Republican President Ronald Reagan, even as he was trying to pursue a more rational policy toward the Soviet Union, said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. We've completely given away the idea of an American president, even standing up to the man who was in charge of the intelligence services that attacked our election, because that intelligence service helped him get into office. It's extraordinary.
Joy, I'm old enough to remember reading in high school about how Bill Clinton was the worst guy on the planet because he protested the Vietnam War when he was in England, right? This whole notion of the president going across the ocean and criticizing this country is shameful. And again, remember, this is a president who has always admired Vladimir Putin. This is a Republican Party that has in many ways praised Vladimir Putin when Obama was in office. This is Vladimir Putin, whose government is possibly responsible for assassinating several people, promoting white nationalist organizations across Europe. This is an absolutely dangerous precedent, and no one will share information with us after tomorrow's meeting. No smart nation will do so.
I am old enough to remember when the EU was considered our friend.
They still are.
The American president to call the EU a foe is pretty extraordinary. John Fuglesang sticking around. Thank you, Zerlina Maxwell, Jess McIntosh. You can hear them together on SiriusXM from time to time. Jason Johnson, you can pretty much hear him every weekend because we don't let him have weekends off. We make him come here every weekend. Coming up at the top of the